Welcome to the channel for any new people here, and a warm welcome back to existing viewers and subscribers. A few days ago, the US Senate passed a bill, the Uyghur Forced Labour Bill. This bill effectively bans all goods from the area of Xinjiang in China. Again, the US are using their tried and tested playbook of alleged human rights abuses. This is of course untrue. And in today's video, we are going to investigate the real reasons that this bill has been passed and why these sanctions have been imposed on the Xinjiang region of China. Now, before I get into this video, I want to point out that when producing videos of this nature, I often use notes and a teleprompter. And this is so I don't forget any of the informational talking points that I want to raise. And I find it kind of funny that the China haters who attack me think I do this as I am reading some sort of script that has been prepared for me by the Chinese government, or that I'm being held hostage. It's really so ridiculous. Okay, so let's get into the video. The bill will now be signed into law by US President Joe Biden, and it will mean that all products with a connection to the Xinjiang region of China will be banned from being imported and sold in the USA. And I'm pretty sure that the USA will also put pressure on the other Five Eyes nations to do the same. So you can possibly expect similar action from the UK, Australia, Canada and maybe New Zealand. However, so far New Zealand don't seem to be in line with the other Five Eyes nations so much with regard to their China policy. Now, this bill is a forced labour bill. Even though no forced labour has been proven, the bill makes the assumption that anything that is produced with a connection to the Xinjiang area of China must have included forced labour, and is the responsibility of the purchaser or importer to prove otherwise. Now, I, like many of you watching this video, have always believed in the presumption of innocence, which states that anyone accused of wrongdoing should be considered innocent until proven guilty. Well, this bill turns that on its head. There is no longer presumption of innocence. Now, this from a nation who thinks it's a shining beacon of democracy around the world, even recently organising and hosting a summit on democracy. Now, the problem here is that it was the USA, a country with only around 4% of the world's population, who unilaterally decided who could attend and who could speak at the summit. Now, does anyone seriously think that's democracy in action? So the US have even set up a task force, a forced labour enforcement task force, to assess available information, provide guidelines and give advice to border control and customs as to best advise companies and importers how to avoid Xinjiang products. Now, all this action to ban and sanction Xinjiang products, but they have neither visited Xinjiang or asked any questions of non-profit organisations like the Better Cotton Initiative, who until recently had offices in Xinjiang and whose purpose was to advise and report on the cotton industry that Xinjiang cotton was not only sustainable but ethical too, and in 8 years did not report one single incident of forced labour or any other labour issues that may be cause for concern. Now, BCI no longer operate in Xinjiang because their chairman, Mark Lukowitz, happens to be the CEO of a huge US cotton brand. This brand is Supima. Now, Supima is the marketing organisation for an American brand of cotton called Pima, a direct competitor of Xinjiang cotton. An obvious conflict of interest here. Now, Mark Lukowitz has instructed the staff in China to withdraw from Xinjiang, not because of any problems, but because of concerns, not because of any evidence. And it also can't be a coincidence that the sales of Pima cotton, which were declining, have now rebounded. This is of course bad news for Xinjiang cotton farmers, but of course good news for US corporate cotton producers, having successfully blocked imports of cotton from China, the world's largest cotton exporter. Their own projections now look much better according to the US Department of Agriculture. US cotton will pick up while China's cotton, the vast majority which is from Xinjiang, will decline. Now, I'd imagine the US will be giving themselves a big pat on the back for a job well done. Now, as restrictions are applied to Xinjiang cotton, something needed to be done about the US tomato production, which has struggled to maintain production rates due to high quality imports from both Mexico and, yeah, you guessed it, Xinjiang. But instead of US tomato growers trying to find more efficient methods of production or cutting costs to become more competitive, farming lobbyists turn to the government to find ways to stop the competition from China, the largest tomato producer in the world. Again, much of it coming from Xinjiang. Now, apparently, the US have now allegedly found labour abuses in Mexico and Xinjiang. It just happens to be that Mexico is also the world's third largest tomato producer. The US has now imposed restrictions on imports from both Mexico and Xinjiang, and tomato production in the US is now surprisingly back on track. While the US makes allegations of slave labour in the Xinjiang cotton industry, at the same time, John Deere of the US, one of the USA's largest agriculture machinery manufacturers, sells huge amounts of cotton harvesters to farmers in Xinjiang. So this slave labour thing doesn't really add up because they're using lots of mechanical machinery, not hand-picking. Some of the cotton's hand-picked, and from what I understand, the Uyghurs who hand-pick that cotton are paid quite well. And it's also worth noting that many global importers, retailers and manufacturers spend a lot of time and money on both announced and unannounced audits of cotton farms and factories in the Xinjiang region. One such company is Skechers, who posted the following notice on their website, stating that they had conducted multiple audits and found nothing of concern. Now, while the USA make unfounded accusations of slave labour going on in the Xinjiang region, there is proven slave labour actually going on in the USA. And just recently, in December 2021, the Department of Justice announced an indictment against 24 people involved in slave labour and people trafficking to work on farms in the US. The indictment lists 54 charges and details brutal conditions Mexican and Central American workers endured on farms in South Georgia. The investigation was led by the Department of Homeland Security and found that many thousands of people since as early as 2015 were illegally smuggled into the country and set to work in what was being called modern-day slavery. The investigation was carried out over a period of 3 years and details how workers were exploited and threatened with violence. The indictment also details how the workers were made to dig onions with their bare hands and only paid 20 cents per bucket. They were held in fence camps with minimal food, unsatisfactory sanitation and a lack of clean water. And it's known that 2 of the workers died as a result of these conditions. Now, interestingly, I had a quick look on the BBC website and it produced no results at all for this story. Now, just imagine how much coverage the BBC would have given this story if it had taken place in China. Furthermore, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the USA bans slave labour in the USA, except for people that are punished of committing a crime, where this does not apply. Now, that means that prisoners in the USA can be used as slave labour, and there is much documentary evidence of prisoner labour being used on farms all over the US. There's an old saying, when you live in a glass house, you shouldn't throw stones, and I really think US politicians should listen to this advice. While the sanctions against Xinjiang allow inefficient or expensive producers in the US to reclaim their market share, often by using the very same working conditions they allege are happening elsewhere, they fail to address an important point. And that is the sanctions are selective. They affect Chinese businesses but not American businesses. American businesses continue to operate freely in Xinjiang. Hotel chains such as Hilton and Sheraton have large properties in Xinjiang. Fast food outlets, KFC, McDonald's, Starbucks also have many outlets there and employ many people. Many US Fortune 500 companies operate in the Xinjiang region, and I really don't think these companies would risk their reputations if what the US government alleges was really going on there. They would simply withdraw as they have too much to lose. It's clear to me after looking at all the facts, doing some research and speaking to people that these allegations by the USA are less about human rights and more to do with protecting US agricultural industries. But like I have said in previous videos, attacking countries using allegations of human rights is a tool in the USA's toolbox that they have used time and time again, and it works well, so they continue to use it. More people need to see past the headlines, dig into the facts and see what is really going on. And it's quite ironic that after killing hundreds of thousands and creating millions of Muslim refugees with their invasions of Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, the US now cares so much about Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. The truth is they don't. As by signing this bill into law and imposing these sanctions, they will harm, not help the Uyghur people. It will make it more difficult for Uyghurs to find employment. And we're already seeing this with some Chinese factories that have major Western customers reluctant to employ Uyghur workers for fear of losing business. But of course, the US already knows this. It's all part of their plan. It's well documented that in regions of high unemployment and poverty, it is much more likely for civil unrest to take place. And this is exactly what the USA are hoping for, as they wish to destabilise the Xinjiang region for their own geopolitical interests. In reality, the US government couldn't care less about the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Over the last decade, China have invested huge amounts of money into the Xinjiang region, putting an end to terrorism, training people to have skills and creating employment. Many people in the Xinjiang region have seen their standards of living significantly increase, and I don't think China will let all this hard work be wasted by the meddling of the US. I'm pretty sure Chinese consumers will step up, buy more Xinjiang products and support the region. I do hope you found this video interesting and informative. If you did, then please hit the like button, as it helps the distribution of the video and gets it out to a wider audience. Please consider supporting our channel so we can continue to bring you content like this. And I'd like to thank everybody who does support the channel, either via donations, sharing our content, or just watching our videos. It's really very much appreciated. And if you do like the content we produce, please consider subscribing to the channel. Now, the inspiration for this video was from an article written by Jerry Gray, an expat living in China for many years. Jerry writes some excellent content, and I'll put a link to his original article in the video description. Now, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out to watch this video. However, as always, for now, take care. P.S. I hope you like my beanie hat. See you next time.